most sorry, I'm just my video just said something. One of the most powerful payment processing companies in the world, as well as SpaceX, one of the first, I believe, independent space company to travel to space. Elon Musk is the leader, or was the leader of two of these companies, or one of them, and now is still the leader of one or two of them. I can't remember if he's still in charge of SpaceX. Elon Musk recently said there's a 1 in a billion chances that we're not living in a simulation. 1 in a billion chances that we're not living in a simulation. Think about that for a minute. Jim Carrey has straight out said, we live in a simulation, we live in a video game, this is our character, this is not really who we are. There are a multitude of quantum theories, quantum science experiments and theories that I'm going to just briefly share with you. I've studied these a little deeper, but I'm not a quantum scientist. I'm not. This is not my forte, so I'm going to explain it in the language that I understand. And if you disagree with it, that's great. Go research it more, and maybe you can find something I haven't found. If you agree with it, I still encourage you to go learn this stuff on your own, because my interpretation is not going to be your interpretation. So theories like the Copenhagen interpretation, which is back in the 1800s, said that energy basically exists as a state of physical matter and also energy at the same time. So in other words, reality is not physical like we think it is. It exists in two states, which is the quantum state, which is both energetic and physical at the same time. The double slit experiment, performed a little later on, basically says, again, I'm saying this very loosely, have compassion for my ignorance. Double slit experiment, it basically tells us that matter only exists when we're looking at it. When we're not looking at it, it collapses into a state of probable potentiality. So in other words, the wall behind me only exists because I can see it as a reflection in the video camera. But if I didn't have the video camera on, the room wouldn't be there until I turn around and look at it. Now this sounds a little hokey, right? It sounds a little bit out there. But if you think about video games when they first came out, do you remember video games? You could be running down your game world, and you look really far ahead of you, and you see that the game world hasn't even been created yet, because the game is, the processor is not very advanced, or maybe it's like an Atari or an original Nintendo or something. And as you get closer, the game starts to materialize. And the reason for this is so that the game can save its processing power and just create the reality when you need it. Well, that's kind of what reality apparently does too. And we'll never know, because it's too quick for our eye to catch, unless, or not, I said we'll never know. I don't know if that's true, but it's built in a way that it's too quick for the eye to catch in regular circumstances. Using psychedelics, these types of things become very normal sometimes. A doctor named Dr. J.B. Ryan had a man come into his office one day and say, I can control the roll of the dice with my mind. And Dr. J.B. Ryan says, prove it to me. And the guy proved it. He did it with dice and random objects and even radioactive decaying matter. This man was able to determine how it behaved at a rate of 7% above random. So in other words, he was able to influence the roll of the dice with his mind. So not only does our observation create our reality, but our expectation of what that reality is going to be also affects our reality. So not just our observation, but our expectation of reality determines what kind of reality we create. In other words, how you expect people to behave, how you expect the world to be, how you expect government to be, how you expect finances to be, how you expect rich people to be, how you expect your mother and father to be, how you expect your brother and sister to be, all affect what version of them you experience in your reality. It's really bizarre to think about. There are theories like the holographic universe, which basically all but scientifically proves, maybe even proven now, I'm not sure, that reality is like a hologram. It's not physical, it just looks physical, it's a projection. One of the ways that I was kind of able to grasp this is, if you think about our electrons and protons and neutrons, our nucleus, if you think about an electron, an atom is a ball of energy, so to speak, or at least that's how we're told it is, with an electron apparently spinning around a proton and a nucleus. Okay, so the electron has a negative charge, so the thing spinning around the nucleus and the proton has a negative charge, and the proton on the inside has a positive charge. Science is now suggesting that maybe that's not an electron, but maybe it's an entire electromagnetic field around the atom with a negative charge. So what happens when you bring two magnets together on the same negative end? Well, they repel each other, right? Well, the electrons in our hands, the electrons in our body, the electrons in my left hand, electrons in my right hand, other way around, left hand, right hand, are repelling each other to create the experience of physical reality. But otherwise, there is no physical reality here except for the electromagnetic pull and push between my cells, between my atoms, between the very small aspects of what I am. They're repelling each other, creating an experience of physical reality. Without that electromagnetism, there would be no repelling and my hands would just go through each other. But the electromagnetism, and again, please have compassion for me if you know how to explain this stuff in a better way, or if you know more about this stuff than I do, because I'm not a scientist. This has just come to me through my own experiences. The repelling experience is what creates physical reality to seem physical for us. There are other theories like the multiple realities theory, that there are infinite multiple realities that are very similar to this one. Some theories even say that we're constantly shifting to these infinite realities. Every moment, every decision we make, we're shifting to a new reality. There's a really interesting philosophy called subjective reality versus objective reality. A man named Steve Pavlina, I'll write his name down since I'm crediting him here. Steve Pavlina has done a lot of work around this, and he talks about the idea of subjective and objective reality. So when you think of an objective reality, you think about you being in a dream and me being in a dream, and we're both in a dream together. I'm there, you're there, and then there's this dream world. Or I'm here, you're there, and we have this reality we call the world. That's an objective reality. You and I are both experiencing a reality together. In a subjective reality, I'm experiencing my entire unique experience of reality, and it is totally and fundamentally independent from every other being in the vastness of the universe. You're experiencing your own unique version of reality, and every other being in your reality is just a reflection of you. And in their own reality, they're experiencing a different type of universe. This is a tough one to really think about, right? And the idea is that Ricky Goodall doesn't really exist in your reality. I am a reflection of you. I am a projection of your consciousness. The video you're watching right now is an attempt that you've made to remind yourself of what you are. I'm a reflection of your consciousness. I'm not real in your reality, other than as a projection and a reflection of you, according to this theory. Now, I like to take all of this stuff together, and I've created my own kind of theory. And I'm not the first person to suggest this theory. I'm just one person. And that theory is that we're living in sort of a video game simulation. And if you think about that, this is how we could kind of imagine it. Our bodies are these bio-supercomputers, highly advanced bio-supercomputers that respond to everything, create the reality around us, and also react to the reality around us. Okay? So if you imagine your consciousness plugged into a video game right now, if I'm in your consciousness, you know I'm not really there. I'm just a projection of your consciousness, just like when you dream. If you dream tonight and I'm in your dream and I'm having a conversation with you, when you wake up, you're going to say, oh, Ricky wasn't really in my dream. I just imagined him there. Well, the idea is that reality works the same way, that we're just imagining reality into existence all the time. And that your entire experience of reality is your own individual experience, your own individual video game, so to speak, that you've created for yourself to grow, to evolve, and to experience the miracle of life. Reality is like our game world, right? So your physical reality, your experience of reality is your own unique game world. And the point of the game, according to these ancient forms of wisdom, and this is not a new theory. The video game theory is new because now we have video games. We didn't have video games 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago. They had different ways of explaining this stuff. But if you read this stuff, if you read the Kybalion, or you read the Hermetica, or the Virgin of the World, or if you read Gnosticism, or if you read about Kabbalah, or you read about alchemy from the perspective of it's a video game, and you're in the video game, and you're the center character of the video game, this stuff will really start to make sense to you in a huge way. The point of the game is to wake up to our own universal freedom. That's the term that I call it, universal freedom. But they call that enlightenment in some circles. They call it absolute happiness in shamanism, in Inca shamanism in Peru. They call it absolute happiness, a state of happiness all the time, a state of bliss. In Kabbalah, they call it the end of correction, the end of correcting the nervous system, correcting the beliefs, the thoughts, the habits, and the pain that hold us back from fully waking up. The end of correction. In Buddhism, they call it the end of suffering. The end of cleaning the triggers, cleaning the beliefs, cleaning the lifestyle habits that cause us to experience suffering in our lives, or nirvana, or what have you. There are lots of different names for it. These symbols are two very important symbols that help us understand this process of waking up to this universal freedom. When you really start to grasp these symbols, they make perfect sense. And what these symbols represent is, it's on my sheet to start telling you about this stuff now. So these symbols represent a couple of different things. So first of all, the 5-sided star represents the 5 elements, right? So we've got fire, water, ether, air, earth. I'm sure you've heard of these. If you haven't, they're called the classical elements. Let me see if I can get the focus back in there. They're called the classical elements. Aristotle talked a lot about them. Pythagoras, Plato, a lot of these ancient philosophers talked about these elements. And the reason they're important is because everything in nature is composed of these elements. Fire, air, water, earth, and ether. So fire is obviously the energy, the electricity in the world. Water is obviously the liquid. Earth is the physical matter. Air is the gases in the world. And ether is the space. So in the Platonic, in Plato's kind of theories, he calls these the Platonic solids. There's the tetrahedron, which is a certain type of shape. The icosahedron, I believe, the dodecahedron. I might get those mixed up for what they actually are. But there are 5 Platonic solids that also represent these 5 elements. There are also 5 states of matter that are represented by these elements. So we have the state of matter of plasma, liquid, space again, gas, or matter. So the entire universe can be categorized in just these 5 states of matter. Everything in the universe is either plasma, liquid, gas, matter, or space. Everything in the universe can be broken down into those 5 simple categories. Now there's something else that's really interesting here. This symbol also represents the human being. We've got the feet here and here, the hands here and here, and then the head right here. Okay? So this is the microcosm symbol. In ancient forms of wisdom, they call this the microcosm. Okay? Micro means smaller. This symbol, the 6-sided star, represents the macrocosm, or the bigger. In other words, this represents the human, or the small, and this represents the God, the creator, the everything, or the big. Now, the reason this symbol is important is because it's also a breakdown of the 4 elements. So we've got the element fire represented by the triangle. We've got the element water represented by the inverted triangle. We've got the element air represented by the triangle with a horizontal line through it. And we've got the element earth represented by a downward pointing triangle with the horizontal line through it. Now, if you take these symbols and you add them all together, you get this symbol right here. So in other words, when you add the 4 elements together without the ether element, you get this symbol. When you add the ether element, you get this symbol. So then what is the ether element? Well, according to these ancient systems, the ether element represents consciousness. It represents the observer. It represents self-awareness, self-consciousness. So in other words, this is God, creator, universe, conscious of itself. This is God, creator of it, or universe, as the construct. So fire, air, water, earth is like the video game. Fire, air, water, earth, ether is the character in the video game. Okay, important to understand. This symbol represents the character of the game. This symbol represents the whole game itself, the whole universe itself, without the consciousness or the self-consciousness to observe itself. So this symbol represents God. This symbol represents the child of God, holy child, so to speak. Now, to make this a little more complicated for you, where's oh, there it is. My eraser. Okay, so let's complicate it a little bit more. Now, what's really interesting about these systems is that the ancient Hebrews had another way of understanding this that our society isn't quite familiar with just yet. So first of all, the fire, air, water, earth. So fire is represented by the letter Yod in the Hebrew. Let's get that focus working a little bit here. Let's see if we can, there we go. Fire is represented by Yod. Water is represented by He. Air is represented by Vav. And earth is represented by He again. Yod, He, Vav, He. You probably recognize those 4 letters. if you've been doing any kind of work around this. This is apparently the name of God. Now in the ancient systems, it means a lot of things. It means fire, water, air, earth. It means father, mother, son, daughter. It means south, west, east, north, and so many other deeper layers of symbolism. It also represents the so-called name of God. The word Lord in the Bible is actually a translation of this, because we don't have an English equivalent for this, because it's called the Tetragrammaton. It's a very important symbol in esoteric studies. Now we get a little more complicated. So we've got Yod, He, Vav, He, fire, air, water, earth. So if you look over here and we add that, we get Yod, He, Vav, He. But what about the important ether element at the top? What about self-consciousness? How do we actually represent that? We represent that with the letter Shin in Hebrew. Yod, He, Shin, Vav, He. In other words, Yod, He, Shin, Vav, He. Now there's a really interesting theory in these ancient esoteric studies. Now usually you wouldn't learn this until you were a really high initiate. I think in Freemasonry you learn this as a 33-degree Mason. I'm making that up, but I think I've read that somewhere. And it's a secret that's all throughout the ages, but it's so hidden. It's so deep in symbolism that you can't really find it very easily. And this is what it is. When you look at these elements together, they individually represent 5 parts of the human being, the 5 parts of the human of what we actually are. This represents our spiritual body. Fire represents our spiritual bodies, our spiritual energy, our energy to move forward, our courage, our willpower, our intention. And then we have water, which is water, which is our emotional body. This is how we actually feel pain and pleasure and all of the other kinds of emotions that we feel, how we express ourselves, how we live authenticity, and so on. Air represents our mental body. This is our thoughts, our beliefs, our words, and so on. And then we have our physical body, which is, of course, the body that we're all familiar with, our physical body. So then what is Shin then? Well, Shin represents the astral body, or the higher mind, the consciousness. So when we fully heal the spiritual body, the emotional body, the astral body, the mental body, and the physical body, instead of existing as 5 separate bodies, 5 separate elements, Yod, He, Shin, Vav, He, the ancient Hebrews created a new term to represent the human being that has fully healed themselves, and they call that Yaheshua, or in other words, Jesus. And so Jesus, or the man we call Jesus, in my theory, based on some more stuff I'm going to share with you in a minute here, was not actually the child of God as we think it was, but rather the personified being who integrated with their own higher self, integrated with their microcosmic self, and became a God on earth, so to speak. And so where do I get this theory from? How can I just say something like that? And the reason I can say it is because in books like the Gnostic Bible, you hear different stories about Yaheshua. They don't call him Jesus, they call him Yaheshua. And they talk about different parts of who he is and different parts of what he thinks and how he believes in things. And what this being actually said was that we are one being manifested as 2 energies, masculine and feminine. When we bring those 2 energies together, when we find balance, remember these, I didn't tell you this yet, but these elements all have either a masculine or a feminine nature. We've got masculine, feminine, and then the astral body is both masculine and feminine. So when we make the 2 into 1, Yaheshua says in the Gnostic Bible, when we make the mother and the father, the masculine and the feminine, the fire and the water, when we make them into one, they become God or creator or higher self. And so this Jesus character taught about a lot of this stuff, this Yaheshua character. Now, again, Yaheshua is a name that the ancient Hebrews would give people when they reached a certain level of Christhood or enlightenment or the end of correction. They would call them Yaheshua as like a sort of like a blessing or an anointing. You're now anointed. I now call you Yaheshua. As shamans in Peru are called maestro. They're called master. They're called doctor. You know, it's the same kind of idea. It's a term. It's a code that means something about your level of enlightenment that you've reached. Now, this isn't a new idea. This is old. This is written in many books. I've got books by Eliphas Levi. You'll find a book list in your course that will give you all of these books. The Gnostic Bible. There's a book by Tom Harper called The Pagan Christ. And in this book, he shows you the connections between the god Horus, which you might know as the Eye of Horus, and the character of Christ. The god Horus who's represented by, I can't really draw the eye right now. I can't remember how, you know, probably know the eye of Horus, the Egyptian eye. The Horus character has one eye the sun, one eye the moon, which represents masculine and feminine energy being perfectly imbalanced. He was born of a virgin mother. His father Osiris was died and resurrected. He was born on December 25th, and all of these other similarities to this Yeshua, or Jesus character. Why December 25th? Lots of theories. Could be because that's the best time to get pregnant, because the woman will go through the winter in her first trimester, the spring in her second trimester, and then her third trimester will be during the feasting times, during the harvest, when food is most plenty available, and that's when life, flourishes again. And so there are so many connections between characters like Jesus or Horus or Krishna or Apollo or Quetzalcoatl and many of these other characters in history that share similar theories, similar archetypes. Because in ancient times, myths were necessary to transfer knowledge and to transfer these deep concepts and ideas. There's another book called The Unknown Life of Christ, where this man named Nicholas Notovich, he's a Russian explorer back in the 1800s, ends up stumbling upon these Tibetan and Tibetan monasteries in India and Tibet, and he discovers these ancient scrolls about this Christ character, except they didn't call him Jesus, they called him Isa, a different name, and had a very different story. Apparently he left Jerusalem at 13 years old, or Babylon, or wherever he was, and went on a caravan, went on a trip to India and Tibet and these other places to study what we now know as yoga, meditation, and potentially even psychedelic ceremony called Soma, different types of psychedelic practices. He's probably studied all of these things. So as I started studying this stuff, I started applying what I was learning to my magic practice, to my ceremony practice. And it got to the point where I've never said this really in a big way publicly, I have directly invoked this character called Yeshua. I have become this higher self. I have seen my life and the lives of others through this higher self. I have received all of this information that I'm sharing with you here through this higher self. I've developed this entire system, which you're going to go through here from this higher self. So we ask, well, what's the point? What's the point of all of this stuff? Why should we care? Why should we care about any of these things? And here's why. Because all of the sickness in the world, all of the crime, all of the poverty, all of the scarcity, all of the suffering is rooted in the individual recreating their suffering as a result, this camera keeps unfocusing, creating their suffering as a result of their bodies not being fully healed. And so this is kind of how it works. We've got this spiritual body, we've got this emotional body, we've got our mental body, we've got our physical body, and then we've got our astral body, which again is sort of like our higher self, our higher consciousness, or the source of our reality. When we experience any level of pain or trauma, even if it's you come home with a math test and your mother doesn't give you love, she doesn't tell you that you did a good job, it's 85, maybe why didn't you get 100, should have got 100, or maybe they just ignore you completely, they don't pay attention to you at all. That creates a pain, which goes in here, creates emotional pain. If you don't express it and talk to your parents about it and they tell you that they love you and don't worry about it or anything like that, then it gets rooted in there and it begins to manifest as physical tension, but it also manifests as mental beliefs about ourselves. It manifests as beliefs in who we are, beliefs in whether or not we deserve love, beliefs in whether or not we're worthy of love. And then since it's there, it also manifests as a spiritual sickness, which makes us afraid to go for our goals, afraid to live our truth, afraid to follow our passion, afraid to take chances on ourselves. And that's just a really basic example. But literally, every single painful event that we experienced has created some level of trauma or pain in our nervous system, and it stays there forever, sabotaging us until we fully heal it and process it. So when we neutralize the pain that we've been given, when we fully neutralize the pain that's happened to us, then we start to heal the beliefs and the associated habits that come from it. So very briefly, again, I'm going to get into this a lot more deeply throughout the program. This is just an introduction, but it will tell you a little bit more. And so this is kind of how it works. When we experience pain, it locks in our beliefs, Our beliefs inspire our thoughts. Our thoughts inspire our words, habits, and our behavior. And then our words, habits, and behavior create our reality. This is like the screen that our reality exists on. So if something happens to you, it creates a pain. You create a belief about yourself. You don't deserve love. The thoughts are that you don't deserve love. The thoughts become words, habits, and behavior that they say you don't deserve love. Words, habits, and behavior send out a really strong frequency vibration into the universe, which then reflects back the reality that's aligned with your thoughts, words, habits, behavior, beliefs, and ultimately your pain. So this is the emotional body. This is the mental body, all the way around to here. And this is kind of how the system kind of repeats itself. We end up creating pain. The pain ends up creating the beliefs. The beliefs inspire the thoughts. The thoughts inspire the words, habits, behavior. The words, habits, and behavior create a reality or a life that doesn't bring us happiness. That life ends up creating pain in us, and the whole cycle repeats itself. But as we heal our pain, as we really deeply heal the pain, the Christians called it, and ancient Christian mystics called it demons. As we heal our demons, I call it sort of like computer viruses. As we heal our computer viruses, our bio-supercomputer starts working properly again. It starts working at its full capacity. We begin to raise our vibration to the point where we integrate with our higher self, and then there's no difference between our higher self and our ego self. That's what they call ego death. You're not really dying. Your ego's not dying. Your ego's surrendering to your higher self. And then your higher self is able to shine through without the ego trying to fight it all of the time. So again, this system that you're going to learn through how to actually go through this process and reach universal freedom has been channeled directly from God through me and my studies. It's a combination of the material I've studied and then the images and the visions that I've gotten from God, Creator, Higher Self. I believe that I am Yeshua. I believe that you are Yeshua. I believe that we are all Yeshua. We are all the higher self. We are all the microcosm experiencing the macrocosm as a human being. I have good reason to believe this, not only because of my theories and because of my stuff I've read and because of the ceremonies I've done, but because I have personally witnessed miracles and I have performed miracles. I have watched shamans end people's pain immediately without plant medicines, without anything, just be able to help them get out of their pain that they're in, maybe back pain, maybe any other kind of physical pain, heal them immediately with rituals. I have watched shamans, and I have personally, and I say this with humility only for the sake of inspiring you, I have personally been able to suck energy, dark energy, demons, viruses, belief patterns, pain, whatever you want to call it, suck energy out of people into my body, and then grab a bucket or run to the bathroom and vomit that energy back out and have actual material coming out of my body into the toilet or the bucket. I've done this multiple times, and I've seen other shamans do it too, and I'm just getting started with this stuff. Initiation is required, I believe, for this stuff to really make sense to you. You have to be initiated. It's not something that makes sense to the average person because initiation is an ancient ritual passed on from one person to another. Now, luckily, I've included an initiation ritual off to the side of this program if you're interested. If you're already initiated, no problem. If you can find somebody to put you through an esoteric initiation ceremony, then that's all you need. I also offer one-on-one ceremonies. You can reach out to me, but I've made a very cost-effective, simple version of it, an online version of it, which you can see on your course page. Initiation is required for this. Initiation is this hokey, woo-woo, spiritual ceremony or ritual that's been used by every spiritual sage or prophet or king or queen in history. Jesus, Buddha, King David, King Solomon, or any other characters, whether they're real or not, were initiated in these stories. They were anointed. There were symbols drawn on. There was holy oil put on their forehead. They were initiated. They were baptized, whatever it might be. There was some type of ceremony like that. Now, the thing with an initiation ceremony is if you were baptized when you were 5 years old, it doesn't really count because it was against your will. So it has to be something that you want to do, something that resonates with you. This journey that you're about to go on, if you continue moving forward on this, it's intense. Let me tell you, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Harder than any mixed martial arts fighting. Digging up our pain and facing it and forgiving people and letting go of this stuff is really difficult to do. Reaching these higher states of this so-called enlightenment is really difficult. It's difficult. It's very challenging. What I've included in this video is my path. In the next video, you're going to learn an introduction to the path. You're going to learn about what it actually is, how it works, what it means. Not only have I received this system to teach other people, I've also received different methods of teaching it. One of those methods is teaching it through story. So I'm going to be telling a story in the next videos about a fictional character that's come to me through ceremony who goes through this process so that you can learn to understand it from an imaginative way, so you can create to it. This is why a lot of these ancient stories were created. Some of them are accurate, I believe. Some of them are based on ideas. Some of them are a combination of accuracy and inaccuracy. They're not meant to be taken literally, I don't believe. I believe that they're meant to inspire truth inside of us and help us recognize and see the truth inside of ourselves. So I'm going to be sharing a story with you as I go throughout this. The secret to absorbing everything I'm sharing with you, the secret to all of it is imagining that it's just a video game. Imagine that what I'm showing you right now is like the cheats to a video game. This is going to help you heal yourself and help you reach that state that we all deserve to reach, which is the state of universal freedom. Freedom to express, freedom to have, be, and do anything that we desire. We are all gods, you and I. All of us are gods. We're here to experience the growth of remembering who we are. And then once we remember and we heal and we transmute and we transform, then life becomes our playground. And things start to get really, really fun. Okay, so this is what they call the great work in the ancient forms of esoteric wisdom. This is the great work. This is the process of healing. What I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to receive is a simplified form of a very, very, very complex process that takes many people a lifetime to understand. And I've just been fortunate enough to be able to go through this process rapidly and be able to show it to other people. But now, in order for me to get the next level of my growth, I have to give it away. I have to be honest about my experiences. I have to share my experiences. And to put very bluntly, I have channeled God. I have connected to my higher self. I have seen miracles, and I'm just getting started. There's a lot more to the universe than we realize, and this program, this path, this philosophy can help you understand it at a deeper level. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.